So the overseas registration exam is the requirement for you to be fully GDC registered. This applies to non-UK or EEA, European area dentists or qualified dentists. We're the ones who have to write this exam. So if you're coming from the States, or if you're coming from Zimbabwe, if you're coming from India, this is one of two parts that you can go. You can either write this overseas registration exam, or you can write what's known as the London License in Dental Surgery, LDS exam. So there are two different exams which achieve the same process, same outcome,
okay,
which is full registration with the GDC. Now, I'll focus on the overseas registration exam because that's the one that I wrote. Now, when it comes to the overseas registration, now you've been given the right to vote. Now you have to book your exam. Now, the booking process is all done online. This exam, because it's all computer-based, you're literally sitting in front of a computer and writing a multiple choice exam like you used to do in undergraduate, exams. It's not an issue, really. You can get that done and practice for it. There are many apps that you can put on your phone, a book that you can buy as well that helps in that preparation process. And there are multiple resources, even on the GDC website, they'll tell you can read this book and that book. So the first exam, I would say most people pass it on the first attempt. Cost-wise, it's about 800 pounds. Let me confirm the figure is 806 pounds.
Wow.
That's the current cost. However, you have to be aware that this exam, as things stand, was last written going back to 2020, January. And since then, there's been no other exam, and it's unknown when it will be written again.
Wow.
So you've done the first part. And the ORE part 1, you've sailed through and completed it. Then you move on to part 2.
One. What just give us a flavor of what they're asking you, what type of things that they might be asking you.
Oh, brilliant. Well, it's an exam that's split into 2 parts. Just to quote from the GDC website, they say the part A covers clinically applied dental science and clinically applied human disease. And then paper B covers clinical dentistry, including law and ethics and health and safety. So if you remember some of your physiology, some of your cardiology, some of your prosthetics, prosthodontics, periodontics, just the theory of it, this is what you'll be asked about. Then you'll be asked about some of the pathology as well. All of those things will be asked from a theoretical standpoint. And then you'll be, just let's see how good your didactic teaching was, where you come from. And you can take it as sort of an undergraduate exam, similar to, there's some anatomy in there as well. So just try and think back to the days of writing undergraduate exams, multiple choice. That's what it's like. But there's a book and several books for it and apps such that you should be able to do it. I think there was one book called Pass Test that even had some of that preparation material. And provided you just do it enough times, it should be possible to sail through that one. I wouldn't be too stressed about it because there are resources which you can use, and it's a subjective exam in the sense that the question, provided you've practiced it, you'll soon know the answer is either A or B or C. There may be some way it's a bit gray, but in general, you should be able to get it done. If you've passed your undergraduate, the first part of the ORE, you should be able to get it done.
Okay. And then, once you've passed part 1, what's the timeline in doing part 2? What's happening next?
Well, once you've passed part 1, then you move on to part 2. Right, part 2 is the big one. This is where a lot of people stumble. So part 2 has to be written. Now, it used to have no limit, no time limit on it. But I think now you're sitting on 5 years from completion of part 1. You need to have passed your part 2.
Okay. Now,
part 2 is the clinical exam. This one costs significantly more. It costs about £2,929, just shy of £3,000. So by now, you've maybe spent £500 in the initial bit. You spent another £800 in your part 1 exam. Now you've paid close to £3,000 to write part 2. and you're sitting on almost £4,500 that you've paid so far, excluding any flights that have been paid, excluding any visa fees that you've paid to be together. So in terms of visas and everything, you may be sitting on over 6,500 in flights that you've already paid by now, or £6,000 that you're in.
Yeah.
So the part two is very tricky. Tricky in the sense that the application process is not straightforward. There is a process, but it has significant hiccups or ways that hinder your ability to just sail through part one, part two. Now, when it comes to the second part of the ORE exam, it has a limitation in the numbers. Whereas in part one, 1,000 of you can be put in a hall and we just put and computer screens are in front of you. You can just click on a computer screen and that's about it. But when it comes to the part two, it's a mannequin exam. It's got several parts. Now, this exam has the OSCE, a dental mannequin, diagnosis and treatment planning, and medical emergencies as part of the exam. Now, because these OSCEs, if you remember from your days in dental school, the mannequin, they do require space and the right equipment to work on.
Yeah.
So there's a limitation as to how many people can fit in any one particular venue. I think they were saying that it takes about 120 people per sitting.
Right.
And in the past, they used to do about 3 or 4 exams a year. They've now cut those down to 2 exams a year. Why, I don't really know, but they were cut down.
Okay.
Which means that in a typical year, you may only have 240 candidates being able to sit the exam. At the time that I wrote the exam in 2017, the waiting list for the second part was 500 strong. There were 500 people waiting to write that exam with only 120 places available. The question then is, how is the prioritization done? So initially, the first level of prioritization was those who are about to get to the limit of that 5-year period I was talking about, within which they have to write and pass the exam.
Yes.
The second level was, right, everybody, we're going to open the bookings on a Thursday at 2:30 p.m. Now, when we open on a Thursday at 2:30 p.m., everyone, whether you are in India, whether you're in Zimbabwe, whether you're in New York, you all click the button that says apply at 2:30. Dependent on your internet connection, dependent on, there's some techniques that people have talked about, refreshing the screen, use of a different browser. I'll be honest with you, I used a different sort of browser. Using particular browsers may just give you that extra nanosecond of advantage, which enables your application to reach the server for the GDC first. And once your application hits the server, then you get a confirmation. If your application hits the server after other people have already got their places, then you won't be able, it will just tell you fully booked. I remember one time I tried to book the exam and it filled up within 30 seconds. It was, all the spaces were gone. And I was keeping refreshing, no, full. Within a minute, it was all full, all places were gone. That's the second level. Then the third level is about 30 days before the exam. There's a tendency that some people then realize, you know what, I can't make it for whatever reason. Maybe someone feels they're not prepared enough. Maybe someone feels they've got a life emergency. Then they pull out. So they then reopen for those who want to book. And again, at that time, probably a bit wiser now, you're sitting at your computer at 2:29 and you've already started clicking the application button continuously while waiting for 2:30, because by the time 2:30 hits, you've already been clicking apply already. So you'll probably be one of the first, and then you get your place on the exam. So you've passed the first hurdle.
If people pull out, do you then get an email saying we are going to open up the application again on this date at this time? What they say?
Yes, so it was always a Thursday at 2:30. Everybody would get the email. Everyone all over the world would get the same email at the same time, and bang, then you get into it. Okay. So once that's done, you've now passed the first big hurdle, which is just getting a place on the exam. Now, this exam has not been written since January of 2020, the part 2, which means there's a waiting list of people who've not written the exam in 2020 and in 2021. And at the same time, there's most likely a group of people now who have since come to England to join their spouses, maybe, and are looking to write that exam in the future. So the pressure for places will probably increase, not decrease.
And the people that are hitting their 5-year mark as well, probably more.
They're the ones who will be prioritized as well. I don't know how they're going to sort it out, but as you can imagine, there's quite a bit of an issue there.